Welcome to Joshua study number 14. We're going to start in chapter 14. It's a short chapter. The next chapter is huge, so we're going to get right into chapter 15 for at least a few verses. And we get in here with a short chapter, as I said, that takes us beyond the land that was allotted to Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And also keeping in mind that Levi doesn't have a land inheritance, all of which we've discussed previously, but 2/3 of this chapter deal with Caleb's inheritance as a member of the tribe of Judah. And then we come back to that in the next chapter as he actually takes control of his inheritance with the help of Othniel. And we'll come to that. But he's going into an area that's populated by giants, and we talked about that. So once we cover these first 15 verses here in Joshua 14, we'll jump in and cover some of that in chapter 15, which covers a total of 63 verses. Here we have 15 verses, and we'll open our study then with a word of prayer. Father, we thank you again for an opportunity to teach those who are serious about wanting to learn the Bible. Not very many serious people these days, not very many Christians really serious about learning your word, and we're thankful for hundreds of people over a period of a week or so that tune into these studies on Sermon Audio and Rumble, and then we hear from just a few of them, but we're glad to know that they're listening and watching. Lord, if it came down to it that we were the only one left, we would just still put the studies out there and making them available. But we're so blessed and thankful to have Bible believers still with us. We're not in as bad a shape as Noah was before you flooded the earth, but it's getting bad, and so we're looking forward to you taking us out of here. In the meantime, help us in our studies. For your glory and praise, we love you and love your word. In Jesus' name, amen. So we would just jump right in here, verses 1 and 2 of Joshua 14. And these are the countries which the children of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel distributed for inheritance to them. And then verse 2 says, by lot was their inheritance, as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses, for the 9 tribes and for the half-tribe. Sometimes I love coffee, but sometimes a grind gets loose. And the best way to deal with it is just wash it down with another swig. But this will be a discussion of the lot of inheritance, as it's called, and this will actually take us through chapter 18. So if some of you only like the stories of giants being killed, like David killed Goliath and that sort of thing, not a lot of that in here, but it's interesting to those who are serious, as I said before a prayer. We're going to see 9.5 tribes now get their inheritance. Simeon, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Asher, and then Ephraim and half the tribe of Manasseh. So if you go in birth order, Joseph is higher in the birth order, he along with Benjamin. We do them in order of the mother. We take the mother, I should say. So Benjamin and Joseph are the sons of Rachel. But the other tribes, we already talked about, Reuben, Gad, and half-tribe of Manasseh, received their inheritance on the area east of Jordan toward the rising of the sun. The Levites don't have a land inheritance. We talked about that in previous studies, but That's why Joseph then, because Joseph was so blessed, his two sons were then given actually a separate inheritance. And then Manasseh then was split into half on east of Jordan and half on the west of Jordan. It's not that difficult, but to newcomers to the Bible, it can be a little confusing. You just got to take the effort and time to think about these things. I always say if the Christians were as excited about learning the Bible and dedicated to learning the Bible as Trekkies or followers of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings or the Star Wars, franchise or whatever. There's not very many Christians that I see that are that into the Bible and that dedicated to the Bible. They'd rather, and not them in particular, but there's so many people who they can really get into this other stuff that is meaningless garbage. But the Bible, it's something else. And anyway, I can only say that I wish I could even be more dedicated and excited about learning all this about the Bible. But just think that through and get an idea of what it means before we move on. As he explained in verses 3 through 5, for Moses had given the inheritance of 2 tribes and a half tribe on the other side Jordan, but unto the Levites he gave none inheritance among them. This is all what I was saying. Verse 4, for the children of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. Ephraim is how some people say that. I won't get into it, but Ephraim is how it's pronounced. I mean, it's spelled and pronounced. But if you say Ephraim, you're in good company. Therefore they gave no part unto the Levites in the land, save cities to dwell in, with their suburbs for their cattle and for their substance. Not going to rehash all that, but verse 5 says, all as the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel did, and they divided the land. Now, before getting to the inheritance as divided to the 9.5 tribes as a whole, we deal with an important matter, the inheritance of Caleb. Love that name, Caleb. If I'd had a son of my own, I would have probably named him Caleb. I had girls, and then I married Jenny, who had 2 boys already, and she'd already named them. So, but this is really important, especially if your name is Caleb and you're one of his kids, but it's important information. Verse 6 says, then the children of Judah came unto Joshua in Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said unto him, thou knowest the thing that the Lord said unto Moses the man of God concerning me and thee in Kadesh Barnea. Now we can stop there for a second, because it's just really interesting the fact that Caleb's not called a Kenizzite, but he's said to be the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite. And the Kenizzites were a tribe that date back to, like Abraham. Abraham was a part of a tribe, and then God set him apart from his family, and then his descendants have now, through Isaac and Jacob and the 12 tribes, have become Israel. Well, Caleb's descendants were named actually as possessing some of the land that God promised to Abraham back in Genesis 15, 18 to 21. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites and the Kenizzites and the Cadmonites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Rephaims and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Jebusites. So you hear, if you're listening or reading along, the Kenizzites named right there as one of the tribes owning land that God's going to take away from them. They're not a good bunch. But there's always exceptions to the rule. The exception proves the rule. That's it's just a fact of reality that you need to get used to. It's appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. Of course, Enoch didn't die. Elijah didn't die. The church will be raptured, and those who are alive when that happens won't have to die. They're exceptions, and the fact that they're exceptions, that proves the rule, and the rule is it's appointed unto men once to die. And so that's just an example of what I'm talking about here. Caleb belonged to a wicked, evil people. All these tribes were guilty of all the sins of Leviticus 18. God said so. But Jephunneh must have been an exception, an exceptional man, because his father married a Jewish woman. It's just like Timothy. His mother was Jewish, but she married a Greek, according to Acts 16:1. So Caleb is half Kenizzite, and he's reclaiming part of the land that had been taken from his ancestors and given to Israel through God's covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As Caleb continues making his case in verse 7, he says, 40 years old was I when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to espy out the land, and I brought him word again as it was in mine heart. You may recall Caleb was one of the 12 sent out with Joshua to spy the land, and we discussed that back in Numbers chapter 13 and 14. Verse 8, nevertheless my brethren that went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed the Lord my God. Of course, Caleb and Joshua both stood faithful to the Lord, while the other 10 cowered with fear, no faith in God to keep his word, and they made the hearts of the rest of the people fail. And so then verses 9 and 10 say, and Moses sware on that day, saying, surely the land whereon thy feet have trodden shall be thine inheritance, and thy children forever, because thou hast wholly followed the Lord my God. Just keep that in mind. I say it all the time, and for 35 years I've only stumbled on a few occasions, but I've never quit on the Lord or anything like that. But I've seen a lot of people do that. And I've said for 35 years, I don't care if everybody I know quits on the Lord, I'm not quitting on the Lord. I'll stumble, I've had my failures. I'm a sinner saved by grace just like everybody else, but I'm not going to quit on the Lord. And He's looking for that. You may not feel like you're the most successful Christian who ever lived, and you may feel like you're a failure a lot, too often. But you know what? If you remain faithful, you have your stumbles and you fall, but the righteous gets up 7 times. You just keep getting up. Verse 10, and now behold, the Lord hath kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, even since the Lord spake this word unto Moses, while the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now, lo, I am this day 85 years old, 85 years old, and he's as strong as an Olympian athlete. That's an amazing thing. You know, my dad died this past year, 2024. He was 80. He was just so frail. And both my grandpas were amazingly strong men, you know, through the years, but by the time they were 80, they became very frail. That's probably what would happen to me if the Lord tarries in another 25 years. If I'm still alive, I'll probably be very frail if I'm still here. But again, Caleb was exceptional. And he continues, verse 11 and 12. As yet I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me. Isn't that amazing to think of? 85 years old. He's as strong as he was in his 40s. As my strength was then, even so is my strength now for war, both to go out and to come in. To be able to fight in a war, I mean, that is just amazing. You can talk to our brother Pedro or anyone who goes and gets involved in reenactments. That'd take it out of you. It's just reenactment, but real war, it's just, remember Jonathan, you know, took of the honey to get him a little energy, and his foolish father had made an oath that anybody who ate anything would be put to death. It's just absolutely insane to do that to your troops. That's what Jonathan basically said about his dad. It's insanity. Because you have to be strong. You need that sustenance, but you have to be very strong and have endurance in you, you know, and at the age of 85, ain't no way. He's definitely exceptional. It's an amazing thing. And Joshua himself was described in the first verse of chapter 13 as old and stricken in years. Stricken, that means he was showing his age. And so Joshua has to be a little bit amazed at Caleb. knowing full well that the Lord is the source of Caleb's strength. He wasn't taking some kind of special minerals or vitamins or a cure-all, drinking herbal teas, whatever. Verse 13, and Joshua blessed him and gave unto Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, Hebron for an inheritance. I skipped verse 12. I've got my numbers off a little bit in my notes there. Let's go back to verse 12. Now therefore, this is Caleb speaking. Give me this mountain whereof the Lord spake in that day. For thou heardest in that day how the Anakims, giants, were there, and that the cities were great and fenced. If so be the Lord will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said. So they're still there. It was the giants that scared them 40-some years ago, 45 years ago, and they're still there, and Joshua's 85 and says, I'll take them now. I love it. Verse 14, and Hebron therefore became, 13 and 14, and Joshua blessed him and gave unto Caleb the son of Jephunneh Hebron for an inheritance. Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, unto this day, because that he wholly followed the Lord God of Israel. So Caleb took that mountainous land named after a giant of Anakim, and he named it the Hebrew word for basically what we would say community alliance, that sort of thing. It says in verse 15, and the name of Hebron before was Kirjath Arba, which Arba was a great man among the Anakims, and the land had rest from war. So the city of Arba, Kirjath means city. Kirjath Arba, city of Arba, was the name of and named after a giant who was the founding father of that town. Now it's Caleb's city of alliance and community under God in the nation of Israel. So that's it for chapter 14. We begin chapter 15. It contains 63 verses, still going with the lot of inheritance, and we'll cover it in the remainder of our time in this and the next study. The inheritance, by the way, isn't by birth order, it's by lot. These lots were believed to have been a small stone, but exactly how that worked is not really known. There's some guesswork around it, but we'll just leave it at that. And it's not really important. It's just important to know that that's how this was done. And so we jump right in Joshua 15 verse 1. This then was the lot of the tribe of the children of Judah by their families, even to the border of Edom. The wilderness of Zin southward was the uttermost part of the south coast. The wilderness of Zin is thought to be in the southwest corner of the Sinai Peninsula. It kind of looks like comes down like the, it makes Israel, if you were to take a model of the nation of Israel, it almost looked like a dagger, and it has a pointed bottom. That's where the wilderness of Zin is. If you're not familiar with these names and places, there's a simple answer, and that is get a map. Make sure you get one from a trustworthy resource. But we're not going to have a geography class. It's up to each student to take some time to look into those things. Verse 2 says, and their south border was from the shore of the Salt Sea, from the bay that looketh southward. And of course the Salt Sea is the Dead Sea. And that's along just below the Jordan in the east of Jerusalem, southeast. Then verse 3, and it went out to the south side to Me'alah Akrabim, and passed along to Zin, and ascended up on the south side unto Kadesh Barnea, and passed along to Hezron, and went up to Adar, and fetched a compass to Karkea, which means it went like a circle. Me'al Akrabim sounds like a real tourist attraction when you look at what that name means. Scorpion Hill. It also can mean the ascent of the scorpions. That whole Dead Sea region is pretty rough territory, but when Jesus returns, he'll turn it into a virtual Eden, so stay tuned. Verse 4, from thence it passed toward Asmon, not Amazon, Asmon, and went out unto the river Egypt, and the goings out of that coast were at the sea. This shall be your south coast. The river Egypt was, according to the dictionaries and everything that I've looked into, it's a small brook, is what we call it, a creek. It's kind of like the Scioto River here in Ohio. But then when heavy rains come, it fills up and it becomes more like a river. But you can find that again on the maps. Verse 5, and the east border was the Salt Sea, even unto the end of Jordan, and their border in the north quarter was from the bay of the sea at the uttermost part of the Jordan. Verse 6, and the border went up to Beth Hoglah, and passed along by the north of Beth Arabah, and the border went up to the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. Now that's an interesting thing to note, the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuben. So there's a big stone, it's a big rock, and one of Reuben's sons, Bohan, named it after himself. Now some say, well, maybe it was named for him because he did some act of bravery. Maybe he died there. We don't know. It could have been for the same reason Absalom, if you remember, he reared up a pillar and it was called Absalom's Place, and he explained that he did that because he didn't have any sons and he wanted his name to be remembered. So keep that in mind when you read or hear teachers guessing about these things. They don't really know. Verse 7, and the border went up toward Debir from the valley of Achor, and so northward, looking toward Gilgal, that is before the going up to Adumim, which is on the south side of the river. And the border passed toward the waters of En-shemesh, and the goings out thereof were at En-rogel. So you're looking at a map and you see these places, but the valley of Achor was where Achan was stoned to death after he took some of the stuff at Ai that he wasn't supposed to take. It's another happy place along the borders of Judah. But En-shemesh is a pleasant place for real. I mean, it's the only spring between Jerusalem and Jericho to the east. It's east of the Mount of Olives. En-shemesh is. It's a spring. So you think about how nice that'd be, especially on a hot day, heading out that direction. You can get great, clear, clean water. It's called today the Well of the Apostles, if you go flying over there looking for it. Verse 8, and the border went up by the valley of the son of Hinnom unto the south side of the Jebusite, the same as Jerusalem. And the border went up to the top of the mountain that lieth before the valley of Hinnom westward, which is at the end of the valley of the giants northward. And of course, Jebusites controlled Jerusalem until King David's men, led by Joab, cleared them out, and that's in 1 Chronicles 11. And that valley of Hinnom, it contains or includes a very dark place called Tophet, which they believe comes from the word for drums. And that's where the wicked Israelites in apostasy reared up a Moloch idol, heated his arms, and cast their babies, killed their babies. And the drums would play real loud to drown out the screams of the babies. It's an ancient abortion clinic. Verse 10, or verses 9 and 10, and the border was drawn from the top of the hill unto the fountain of the water of Nephtoah, and went out to the cities of Mount Ephron, and the border was drawn to Baalah, which is Kirjath-jearim. Verse 10, and the border compassed from Baalah westward unto Mount Seir, and passed along unto the side of Mount Jearim, which is Kesalon, on the north side, and went down to Beth-shemesh, and passed on to Timnah. And this is just one of those examples where Seir, we usually think of Petra, or the land of the Edomites, but this is actually a mountain that was named Seir, just like people came from Amsterdam, and here in America they called it New Amsterdam. I mean, that people do that. There's probably somebody came from that area and then named a mountain up north called Seir. It's just a single mountain near Kirjath-jearim, a few miles northwest of Jerusalem. So that's the kind of thing you're into here, trying to figure all this out as you pay attention to all these names and places. And then the border went out, verse 11, unto the side of Ekron northward, and the border was drawn to Shikron, and passed along to Mount Baalah, and went out unto Jabneel, and the goings out of the border were at the sea. Verse 12, and the west border was to the great sea, and the coast thereof. This is the coast of the children of Judah round about according to their families. Now, I'm going to stop because this is where I was going to pick up with the story of Caleb, who approached Joshua already to get a particular piece of land. He's going to offer his daughter in marriage. And so that's where we'll pick up next time. It's an interesting little story added right in the midst of these very tedious, in some ways, descriptions of the lot of inheritance. But this is important, historical, factual information, so don't just, skip it. You need to read it and be familiar with it. We'll see you next time.